Kenzie Wagner. I live in LaGrange, Kentucky, and I'm 12 years old. In my free time, I love to bake. So today I'm going to be teaching you how to make chocolate chip cookies. I'm using the Nestle Toll House original chocolate chip recipe, and it's my favorite chocolate chip cookie recipe. And if you ever get off track while making these, you can just look on the back of the bag. So, before we get started, make sure that you wash down your work surface and wash your hands because we want to stay safe. And the ingredients and tools that we will be needing are 2 1/4 cups of flour, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 cup of butter or 2 sticks, 3/4 cups of granulated sugar, 3/4 cups of brown sugar, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, 2 eggs, and 2 cups of chocolate chips, but most of the time I just use the whole bag. So, now for the tools that we will be needing is a whisk, a spatula, a small mixing bowl, a medium or large mixing bowl, and an electric mixer. All of these tools, except for the bowls, can be swapped out for other things. Like you could use a spoon instead of a whisk, or any others, or something different other than a spatula. And you do not have to have an electric mixer, but it is very helpful if you have one. But if you don't have one, it will just be a little bit trickier, but you can get by. So let's get started. The very first step is to combine your flour, baking soda, and salt in a small mixing bowl. Just gonna dump all of 2/4 cup of flour, teaspoon of baking soda, teaspoon of salt. And make sure that when you're using your baking soda, you don't get it mixed up with baking powder because they do 2 different things and we don't want to mix those up. And then we are going to whisk these together gently and set this aside. The next step is to cream together our butter and sugar. So in our large bowl, before we start combining everything, we want to make sure that we soften our butter. So the way that I like to soften my butter is using 10-second intervals in the microwave. And you don't want to put it in for too long because your butter might be cold, my butter might be hot. So 10-second intervals is a great way to make sure that it doesn't completely melt, because that is a problem and I have made that mistake before, and sadly I have wasted a ton of butter, which is not good. So I'm going to put 30 seconds, but I'm watching that clock to make sure that I only get 10. Now that my butter is softened, we want to make sure that we preheat our oven. You're supposed to do this at the beginning, but it's okay if you mess up and forget. Just make sure that you do it. 1 second, I need to check this to see what we preheated to. 375. All right, our oven is preheated, so now we can get to work on creaming our butter and sugar. So we're going to add 1 cup of flat butter, which is 2 sticks. Mine softened very quickly because it's been sitting out for a while and it's room temperature, but if you get it straight from the fridge, it might take a little longer. And we need 3/4 cup of granulated sugar, 3/4 cup of brown sugar, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Now we are going to take our electric mixer, plug this in, and what we're going to do is we're going to beat this. Start on low and move it up higher just to make sure that it's fully combined until light and fluffy. So as you can see, it gets really tough to mix this. So you have to turn up the power to be able to get through the butter really easily. This butter is hard to work through, which is why it's nice to get softened. But even softened butter can still be tricky. All right, now that everything is combined and it's had a light, fluffy texture, we are going to beat in our eggs 1 at a time. Carefully making sure you only get 1 egg. There we go. We're going to beat that in. It's pretty thick still, so it might be a little bit tricky to do this. So use whatever level you need. And if you don't have an electric mixer, for these 2 steps, it's easier to use a spatula, but pretty much just need to make it work, which is fine. Now we're going to add our next egg and beat it in. We want to beat these in 1 at a time. There we go. now we are going to, I'm letting this sit here so that all that can fall down. Now we're gonna take our spatula and slowly fold in our dry ingredients. So I just like to put a little in, take my spatula and mix it up. You can also use your hand mixer for this, but I prefer using a spatula just so that the flour doesn't go everywhere. And I feel like it's still pretty easy to do this part without a hand mixer. So.
Also, don't forget that when you're using a spatula, you can scrape the dough off the sides if it's
just like this. If it gets stuck, and you always want to scrape down your flour and extra ingredients from the sides to make sure that everything is well combined.
As well as scraping down the two mixers if you're using an electric mixer.
Yes, we will do that soon. But just make sure that you're rolling very slowly to not make a mess, because we don't want to make a giant mess, because then we'd have to clean it up, and cleaning up is not fun. All right, so we're gonna keep on mixing. This could take a while if you're using a spatula, but also if you decide to use an electric mixer, it's still going to be pretty hard, because you don't want to make a big mess, because if you put an electric mixer into flour and mix it up, it goes everywhere. So
we're gonna finish this off camera, and then we'll come back with you guys for the next step.
okay.
Remember, add all of the your dry ingredient mixture slowly.
But it is good, yes, and when you're mixing it in slowly, it's good to do it in small parts to make it so that you don't have so much flour in there that it's hard to combine it all at one time. And we're back. As you can see, our dough is completely mixed up. And if we try and lift, and there's no flour on the sides, there's not much marine flour on the sides or the top. And if we try and lift it up, it won't come up because there is no flour over the bottom, which happens a lot. If you lift up your dough, you'll see there's a lot of flour on the bottom, so make sure that you scrape and fold it in properly. This might take a while, but in the end, it will be helpful. And if you need to use your hands a little bit, feel free to. It's fine. Just make sure that you're not eating raw cookie dough, because raw flour and eggs are not good for you. So now, the last step that we need to do before we can start preparing this to go in the oven, which make sure you have parent supervision or help for the oven, is we need to add in our chocolate chips. Oh my god, I love chocolate chips. This recipe only comes with the semi-sweet bag of Nestle Toll House, which I've had that problem before because we've gotten milk chocolate a few times. It doesn't make it taste any different personally, I believe. So if you go online and search up the Nestle Toll House original recipe, I find that the allrecipes.com has the perfect recipe, and I've used that a lot. But right now we are gonna go ahead and add in our chocolate chips. These are the semi-sweet ones though. And this part gets a little tricky to do with a spatula. I don't suggest doing it with a hand mixer because you don't want to break anything. And this dough gets really thick, so eventually you can't use your mixer. You don't want to break your mixer because then you don't have a mixer to use. So I'm just going to put this in a bowl so that it doesn't get everywhere. And you can go in with your hands. This dough is pretty sticky, so it is going to stick to your hands, but just make sure that you wash them before moving on. So it's really fun texture to feel, and mushing in chocolate chips is so much fun. 1 second, my dog's in here and I just dropped a chocolate chip. Don't give your dogs chocolate, it's not good for them. Throwing that away. Sorry about that.
Also, as you're baking can be very messy, so make sure to clean up as you go.
We've had to wipe down the counter a couple of times, but that's okay because it makes it so much easier when you don't have as big of a mess at the end. Because when baking, there's going to be a lot of dishes, and with all the butter and fat that goes into baking, it's really hard to get that out because it doesn't mix with water. So with all these dishes that are going to be tricky, you don't want to have a giant mess on your counter as well. So now that these are all incorporated, I'm going to go wash my hands and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so I've cleaned up all of the bowls and things that we had when we were mixing our dough. And so now all we have is our dough, and I took a pan and lined it with parchment paper and cut it to fit the pan exactly so that we have no fire hazard. The other two things that I have here is a spoon and an oven mitt. And when you're working with a hot oven or any heat surface, make sure that you have parental supervision and permission. So the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to take our spoon And we're gonna take a spoonful. It's gonna be a little over a spoon. Woo! We lost a little chocolate chip there. And we're gonna roll it into our hands. And depending on how big you like your cookies, I don't like them super big, so I'll take off a little bit. But depending on how big you like your cookies, that's how big your bowl is gonna be. I feel like your regular spoon is a great size for them though. So, and then you wanna space them evenly apart. So I do about a 2x4 per pan. And once you're finished with your first pan, depending on how many there are, no matter how many there will most likely still be a lot more cookie dough left. So you're gonna have multiple pans full. So the best way to do this is make about 2 pans at a time. And when you put one pan in the oven, you'll have another pan ready. And then when that pan comes out, you let your cookies cool, take them off, and you can always reuse parchment paper as long as it's not burning on the edges, and get another set of cookies. But for time's sake, we're not going to do multiple pans on camera, and I'm gonna do the rest of this off camera. But I will go ahead and put these in the oven with you and stuff, and we will see how this pan turns out.
Of course, we will be taste testing these cookies.
Obviously. These are for my dad though, because we made a deal that if we gave him, like if we did a couple of things, and if we did some stuff, he'd get us a cat, and it was like a lot of stuff, and it was like, yeah. But
one of those things was baking a batch of cookies. So
which is my job, because I'm the baker in the family. So now make sure that you have parental supervision and heat-safe oven mitts or something heat-safe to mess when you're using the oven. And make sure that you also have permission.
The oven is set already to 375 degrees,
which is why we preheated it earlier. And we're gonna carefully, without touching the oven at all, unless we're using an oven mitt, put the pan in and close it up. And then I'm setting a timer for 10 minutes because for this recipe it takes 9 to 11 minutes. And I believe that the easiest way to do it is 10 minutes, which is about the average. So, we'll be back when our cookies are ready. Bye! We're back and our cookies have been baked and cooled. When you put them in the oven, whatever you put on your timer, that's fine. But some ovens work differently, so be sure that you adjust your time for that. And if you open the oven, and after the timer, always check before you just go ahead and pull them out and say they're done, because you might need a few more minutes. I know that I had to add a few extra minutes because our oven's a little bit finicky. Some things it cooks a little faster, some other things it cooks a little slower, but that's okay. But so we still have some cookie dough over there and another batch in the oven, so you'll have at least 3 batches of cookies using this recipe. And these are like the perfect size cookies. I've not been able to get this size yet, but this is perfect. So now we're gonna taste test. Caitlin, would you like to try one?
Of course.
That's really good. And it's still a tiny bit warm. So, oh my god, these are good. These are my favorite cookies. Oh. This is like my favorite cookie recipe because they're really crispy on the bottom but softer on the top. So they're really ooey and gooey and delicious. Thank you for watching. And I really hope you enjoyed this video and try this recipe out for yourself because it's super simple and fun to make.